Good evening. It's May 10th, 2013. My name is Matthew Ogden, and I'd like to welcome all of you to a live international broadcast from LaRouche PAC TV. This is our weekly Friday evening international webcast series, and we are very happy to announce that Mr. LaRouche is here in the studio with us again tonight, back from his trip to Europe. Leandra Bernstein will be joining me to pose some questions to Mr. LaRouche, but that will be following opening remarks that I understand that he would like to make. So I give you Mr. Lyndon LaRouche.
Well, I have been somewhat battered, I must say. I won't burden you with that knowledge, but it was a little bit unpleasant for a while. In any case, more recently, I did something very foolish this morning. I didn't know the reason for it. I was surprised by the fact that I did it. But then, after a certain amount of reflection, I figured out what was going on, and that I was displeased with what I was not doing, and it took a peculiar form. But we straightened that out by the course of the day. The problem here that I experienced, it typifies a more general, more significant problem. That mankind does not really grasp its own responsibilities often. It very rarely does. For example, take the case of agriculture. What we practice in agriculture in this nation today, in terms of the overall agricultural policies, foodstuffs and so forth, in terms of the quality of labor as applied to engineering or anything of that sort, all of these things are defective in general today. The reason for this is there's a motive behind all this, as opposed to, and I should contrast a contrary motive. But the motive is that we're living under an oligarchical system. The British Empire typifies it. The crises the United States has undergone since the time of the killing of the Kennedys. All these things are factors of showing a general trend towards stupidity is the kindest thing to say about it. Now, what I did was very silly today. I won't describe it to you, but it was personal. It was very silly. I was reacting to something, and I just blurted something out without any forethought whatsoever, and I had to be shameful about that after that occasion. But mankind is often like that. Mankind is often shameful in the sense that we do not recognize our responsibilities. And these are two kinds of things, often outright fallacies and things where we overlook a responsibility which we do have, but we rush ahead with something which we've already got in mind, and by that blocks us from taking into account what we should be thinking about. We have two categories in general that are typical for this. First of all, agriculture. What we're doing with agriculture is a perfect example of this. Secondly, is the matter of space and economy generally. So that the crisis we have is that we're not developing the world's economy adequately. That takes place in terms of what we do on Earth, what we're doing now, what our economists have been doing. It also takes the case of space, which is another aspect of the same thing. Mankind is going to have to take over responsibility for nearby space, in many respects. We will probably not put anybody on Mars, human beings, for a long time, because the conditions of life required for having human beings on Mars have not yet been established. But what man can do and must do is develop technologies which are adequate for the work we're going to do on Mars or other place like that, And it also pertains to the question of how we're going to organize the universe in general. And we're going to essentially get to the point that we no longer think of Mars as a different planet. We're going to have to think of the solar system as a system which we have to bring under coherent control for many kinds of reasons. And so the time has come that we've got to think into the future and say that this time that is now coming upon us is our time, the time that we're going to bring about the kind of changes in economy, radical changes in economy, which will diversify what we think an economy is. It will also mean that we no longer think of ourselves as on a spot in the solar system amid a lot of other spots. We're going to think of the whole system as a system. Now, the system will be somewhat limited at first because we have certain aspects of the solar system which are more tractable, more accessible to us. Those areas that we're going to have to concentrate on as being a system, not a collection of parts. And so we've come to that kind of time. And we need a recognition of this now desperately, because we've got to change the whole direction in terms of what we used to call economy, or physical economy. But it's going to be more than that, because we have the problems of dealing with the solar system in a more general way. For example, we need an additional supplement to Mars, because Mars is not convenient to us because it only functions a certain part of every 2 years for all of us. So all these kinds of things become important. And as I say today, I checked myself after saying a very foolish thing this morning, on one morning occasion. At first I was bewildered by the very fact that these words have come out of my mouth. But then in the course of time I realized that what was happening was something in me, which is not too well educated, was doing something rather wild and sending me a signal. Hey, we've got to make some changes.